Hello world, hello internet, hello everybody out there who's interested in modern politics. We're taking 1979 as our starting point and we're calling that year zero. Slightly ominous overtones, certainly those of you who know your Cambodian history should be slightly alarmed by that. But we are moving into a very, very divisive period of modern politics, and certainly 1979 is the year when everything changed. And it changed because in came Mrs. Thatcher, and she shook up the status quo. She shook up the complacency that had settled in post-war through really into the 70s. And she challenged redistribution, she challenged Keynesian economics, which up to that point had been the orthodoxy, and she challenged the permissive society, the idea that pretty much anything goes. And the key ideas here are really very, very simple. Micromanaging a complex system is far too complicated. It's way, way, way too complicated. And no matter how well-intentioned the government, no matter how hard it tries, it's going to get it wrong. Furthermore, this whole idea of redistribution simply reinforces and entrenches economic inefficiency, and that inhibits growth. So what we're going to do in terms of economics is that we are going to pursue growth. We are going for growth almost at any cost. When we move on to society, it's all about playing by the same rules. If everyone is playing different games, then we are going to have a weak society. Any society can only possibly be as strong as the forces that hold it together. And if everyone's doing different things and playing by different values and different rules, then those forces are going to be weak and society will fall apart. And this broadly is what the Thatcherites saw in society. They saw society failing and the economy failing, and for us, and for them, it was very, very straightforward. Don't read anything into that, by the way. For them, it was very, very straightforward. We need to go for growth, and then we need to have a nice, strong, stable society, everybody playing by the same rules. We can pretty much sum that up in these two quotes. This is the first one, and this is the one that's got her into so much trouble. Look, there it is. She did say it. There is no such thing as society. We can't deny that Thatcher did indeed say that. But what I want you to do, once you've read that, press pause, read it, what I want you to do is now look at this one and ask yourself, what is a living tapestry of men and women if it is not a society? What is a living tapestry of men and women if it is a society? What she said, and what she meant, and what she did indeed say later, is that there is such a thing as society. It's just not the same thing as the state. And her point here is that if people have a problem, you can see it here in the first thing, if people here have a problem, then they look to the state to sort it out. And her key point here is that the government cannot do anything except through people. And people have to look to themselves first. And this brings us back to the point we made earlier. Government is incompetent. It doesn't matter how hard it tries, it will get it wrong. It will get its sums wrong. It will make mistakes. One thing we can rely on is for people to look after themselves. And so if we empower people, the Thatcherite argument went, if we empower people to look after themselves, then by their own actions, they will improve society. In other words, if everyone goes to the gym and works really hard on getting stronger, then the team will get stronger. But we all have to be playing by the same rules, and we all have to agree, more or less, on the game that we are playing. That, by the way, is an incredible thing. This was an interview in Women's Own, and it obviously lit the blue touch paper, and everything went mental after that. So, here we go. We are now looking at Thatcherism / Neo-Conservatism. We are skeptical about the government's ability to deliver progress. And instead, we argue that no government can achieve anything except through people. If we look at the specific economic policy, this is about encouraging growth, going for growth, enabling people to make themselves stronger. If everyone is making themselves stronger, then necessarily the economy must be improving. So what do? We create economic stability. We have low tax, low interest rates, and low inflation. And that in itself encourages economic inefficiency. We have lower welfare payments. We privatize state outfits. We have privatize state assets. We are forcing everybody to be efficient. And if everybody's being efficient, then no one's draining. No one's a leech on the economy. So this really are the two key points of Thatcherite economic policy: economic stability and economic efficiency. If we do that, then people are in a position to make rational decisions about their own economic well-being. And if they can do that, then they can become wealthier. And if everybody is becoming wealthier, then we've got economic growth and the economy overall is becoming stronger. And that's as simple as it gets, really. When it moves to social policy, again, it's all about strength and stability. Strength and stability through homogeneity. And homogeneity means everybody playing by the same rules. Capitalism. If everyone is a good capitalist, then everyone has the same values. Everyone wants to use their time to make themselves wealthier, to buy their own house, to live in a nice, tidy street with gardens and cars and all of that sort of stuff. If everyone's a capitalist, then everyone's playing by the same rules, has the same set of values, no one's leeching off society, and everyone has an equal stake in the well-being of that society. And then, just to reinforce that, we'll have social and moral conformity. Perhaps the most odious of that is Clause 28, and we'll look at that in class, rather, and we'll deal with that. The other thing we should probably point out at this point, and I do so later, is that law and order is inevitably a very, very important aspect of social policy, because we need to make sure that everyone's playing by the same rules. So this is where we left off last time, and you'll remember this. Nationism, and social democracy essentially achieve the same end. They drag everyone towards the middle, making the poor less poor, the wealthier less wealthy, and everyone sort of converging towards the middle. We still have a degree of differentiation here, but as we can see, it is significantly less than that. So we've brought everyone towards the middle. Now, Thatcher said that simply doesn't work. You can't engineer that outcome. You will get it wrong. And besides, why should these people here, why should the wealthy be punished for working hard? The poor really have to sort themselves out, etc., etc., etc. Instead, they said what we need to do, we need to go for growth. If we are encouraging economic growth, then everyone's getting wealthier. Look here, the poor, they've gone from here to here. Hurrah! And the middle class, they've gone from here to here. Goodness gracious, they must be absolutely ecstatic. And the wealthier, well, they've done extremely well out of this, but then, hey, they were wealthy to start off with, so let's not worry too much about them. What we're saying here is growth. A rising tide lifts all boats. Now, one of the consequences of this is that we have rising economic inequality. But Thatcher's fairly comfortable with that. She says that doesn't matter. What matters is this. What matters is the fact that the poor were here and now they're here. And they're there and they're there and they're there and they're there. So everyone's better off. Hurrah! That's capitalism. That's how it's supposed to work. We can summarize that on this particular page. The government cannot possibly engineer economic growth. It's far too complicated, and there's no guarantee that they're going to be disinterested. In other words, they might have certain agendas. They might come at it with certain prejudices, and those prejudices will be reinforced through their particular actions. Far, far, far too complicated, doesn't work, and no one's that good. Instead, what we do is we create the conditions for growth. If we have those conditions for growth, if growth is happening, then everybody is doing well, or at least doing better. And that is progress. Rather than trying to engineer progress, let's get everybody working hard to improve their own lot. And that really is that's the key tenet of Thatcherism. We have this notion that a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not worried about relative poverty. Thatcher herself dismissed relative poverty as the politics of envy. The only problem was that, that kind of doesn't work. But anyway, we'll worry about that a little bit later. Let's have a look before we go on at Thatcherite social policy. The background here, again, we're coming back to these two particular things. This idea that the quality of our own lives depends on how much each of us is prepared to take responsibility for ourselves. And once we've done that, then we can turn around and help other people. Society does matter. It's not the same thing as the state. Society provides the structure, security, the ability to evolve and gradually towards a better life for us all. But it only improves if people are looking after themselves. The strongest society is one that has strong common identity. And so what we try to do is reinforce that stability, reinforce that strength through homogeneity. We've got everybody playing by the same rules. Now here we see economic policy being used as social policy. This is capitalism, the aspirational society. And the council houses here are so important. This is why they sold off the council houses, because if everybody owns their own house, then everybody has a stake in that society. This follows also through the policies of share sales, the privatization, share sales, privatization, the selling off of state assets, privatization. There we go. This is about giving people a stake in the capitalist aspirational society. It was, political genius. It was very, very simple. If everybody has a stake in society, then everybody is on the same page. At the same time, we enforce social and moral conformity. We're big fans of law and order. We don't like people stepping out. We don't like people getting away with breaking the rules. Race, oh gosh, this was not a happy time. There was an awful lot of race discomfort, which to a certain extent followed from economics, because the immigrant communities were by and large at the bottom end of the social scale. And it's a sweeping generalization, but the reason why we use sweeping generalizations is because they're largely true. Particularly the failed social engineering attempts. And this was another thing, the social engineering of the 60s, the way in which the old buildings were demolished in huge capital estates, that failed, and it created dreadful ghettos. And Thatcherism, one of the failings of Thatcherism was a failure to address this. Sexuality, and again I'm coming back here to Clause 28. This is to do with the normalization of homosexuality, and it was frowned upon. Clause 28 prevented schools from saying that homosexuality was normal, because that was contrary to Thatcherite policy. And, there's a lot of stuff that Thatcher got right, but on this area I think we're prepared to concede that Mrs. Thatcher was definitely more wrong than she was right. What we've got here then is a divergence. In 1979, in the previous slide, we saw Labour and Conservatism converging. Now, what we see is clear water emerging by the middle of the Thatcherite administration. Thatcher has gone steaming on. Labour has drifted to the left, and that was particularly the case after the moderates within Labour split to form the Social Democratic Party, the SDP. And without that moderating influence, Labour drifted ever further left. The problem that Labour had really was that Thatcherite reforms fundamentally reshaped British society, both in terms of economy and society. You can read all of this, we will talk about it in class, but the net result is a significantly expanded middle class, that was intrinsically hostile, indemnably opposed to socialism and even social democracy. We can look at it this way. This perhaps is pre-Thatcherism, this is 1979, and we now move on to a vastly expanded middle class. Whichever party won this vote was the party that was going to win the election. And of course, because this was created by Thatcher, they tended to vote Conservative. So this basically was your Conservative voting bloc in 1983, 1987, and even in 1990. 1992, excuse me. In 1992, thank you very much. 1992. So obviously by 1997, things had changed, and that really is where we're going to go next time. But this was the key thing. If you want to change society, you need to win elections. If you want to win elections, you need to get the people who voted for Thatcher to vote for you. And if you want to secure those middle class votes, then you need to adopt neoliberal policies. And to adopt neoliberalism, you need to ditch your socialism. And so we have New Labour. And that's going to happen in the next slide. I'll see you very, very soon.